Imagine being stranded for 72 days in a plane crash, in a place surrounded by nothing but snow, with no people, no help, and nothing to eat or drink, just the constant threat of death looming over you. But then something happens that you never expected. The story begins on October 13, 1972, when a rugby team was traveling from America to Chile to play their final match. It was a normal flight, and all the players inside the plane were very happy because many of them were traveling by plane for the first time, and they were all going to another country outside their own for the first time. Some players also had their family members with them who were going to support their children in the game. After the plane took off and started moving towards Chile over the Andes Mountains, everything was normal until then. All the players inside were very happy and were enjoying the view of the snowy mountains from the window seats. But they didn't know that something was about to happen to them in a few minutes that is terrifying even to think about. After some time, the weather suddenly deteriorates. A very strong snowstorm hits, causing the plane to shake violently. Due to the shaking, all the passengers get scared. But one passenger inside explains that when a plane passes over mountains, there is turbulence, meaning it's nothing to worry about. Everything will be normal soon. But as the plane moved forward, the turbulence increased. The plane started shaking even more violently. All the luggage inside the plane started falling here and there. Seeing this, panic spread among the people. The pilots were trying to control the plane, but now the plane was out of control. Before the pilots could do anything, a mountain appeared in front of them, and the plane crashed into it, breaking into two pieces. One player was thrown out of the plane with the rear part of the aircraft and disappeared into the air, while the front part of the plane skidded rapidly and crashed into a large ice formation. The impact was so strong that all the seats in the plane were crushed together, killing many people. Now, those who survived the accident composed themselves and began helping the others in the cabin. Some players quickly reached the pilots and tried to pull them out, but both pilots had already died. It was a very painful scene. Blood was everywhere, and dead bodies were scattered all around. A total of 45 people were traveling on this plane, but after the crash, 18 people lost their lives, and only 27 survived. Since the plane had taken off in the evening, night soon fell. The outside temperature began to drop rapidly. The cold was so intense that they couldn't bear it. To protect themselves from the cold, they used the available materials and dead bodies to seal all the holes in the plane so that the cold air from outside couldn't get in, and they all huddled together to keep warm. Their condition was quite bad. They were still in deep shock because they understood that they would not survive. Anyway, they somehow managed to get through the night. When the sun rose in the morning, they saw that 4 or 5 more people had died due to the cold. But the good thing was that the storm had stopped. The weather outside had become normal. When they came out of the plane, they saw nothing but white snow all around them as far as the eye could see. Now these people had to get out of this place as soon as possible because they wouldn't be able to survive here for long. There were no houses, no animals, and no plants around them from which they could survive. First, they took out the seats from the plane so that everyone could have a place to sleep inside. After that, they laid the injured people in the sun so that their bodies could warm up, and they started melting the snow to collect water drop by drop to drink. Then they gathered all the belongings of everyone. If they found anything useful, they kept it in a separate suitcase. Now, some people carried the bodies of those who had died in the accident away from the plane and covered them with snow to prevent them from decomposing so that when help arrived, they could take the dead bodies with them. When things settled down a bit, they breathed a sigh of relief. They were all very hungry. Now, a small piece of the remaining food was distributed among everyone. Although this one piece of food was very little, it was enough to survive. However, everyone knew that they would have to make this food last until help arrived. Everyone thought that by now, the government must have known that their plane had crashed and that they would be rescued soon. That's why they all sat together and waited for help. Actually, the place where their plane crashed was a valley surrounded by high mountains, which made it very difficult to get out of there. While these discussions were going on, a plane passed overhead. Seeing the plane, they all shouted loudly to make their presence known. But it was of no use because the plane was at a very high altitude, so it couldn't see the stranded people below, and the plane flew past them. They disappeared from view behind the rocks. A few hours later, night fell. They all put on extra clothes and hid inside the plane. They used the luggage inside to seal all the holes in the plane. In this way, another night passed. The next morning, a man named Nando regained consciousness. He had been unconscious since the plane crash. Nando was in such a bad condition that he couldn't stand on his feet. But despite this, he went to his sister and hugged her. When Nando asked about his parents, he was told that his mother and father had died. He was very saddened to hear this. Meanwhile, the others melted the snow again and collected some water and drank it to survive. They also made an X sign on the ground so that any passing aircraft could see it. After some time, another plane flew over them, and they were very happy to see it. They tried to attract its attention by flashing mirrors. But this plane also ignored them and flew away. They were happy because they thought that perhaps that plane had seen them and that help would reach them very soon. But another night passed, and no one came to rescue them. Now they understood that no one would come to save them here. So they wondered how they could save themselves in this isolated area. Then they remembered that there were some batteries in the back of the plane. And if they could bring those batteries here, they could use them to power the plane's radio and contact the outside world. Now, everyone liked this idea, but carrying out this task was not as easy as they thought, because the back part of the plane, which had broken off during the crash, was now God knows where. Anyway, they decided to look for the back part of the plane. After that, they made some goggles using leather and glass. These goggles were meant to protect their eyes from the harsh blizzard. 4 people from the group went to retrieve the batteries. But after walking a short distance, when they looked back, they couldn't see their plane anywhere. And now they realized that no one would be able to see their plane amidst all the snow. And perhaps that's why no one had come to rescue them yet. They tried to move forward, but then the snow around them started to slide. Seeing this, they got scared and returned to their plane. 6 days passed with them stranded there. And after a week, all the food on the plane ran out. Now the area was covered in snow, and there were no animals or plants around. So now they had to do something to fill their stomachs. Finding nothing else to eat, they started eating the moss growing on the rocks, which tasted terrible. But they had to eat it out of desperation. Here, Nando said that if he had to eat the bodies of the dead to survive, he would do it. Hearing this, everyone was lost in thought. Soon, a debate arose among them about whether they should eat the dead bodies or die of hunger. Some people said that it wasn't right to do so. God wouldn't forgive them for doing that. After that, they tried to survive by putting stones on their stomachs to suppress their hunger. Time passed like this, and their hunger increased with time. They were even forced to eat their shoelaces and cigarettes. But after being hungry for so many days, those things weren't going to satisfy their hunger. A few more days passed like this, and due to hunger, Nando's sick sister died. Nando lost his sister along with his parents. Time passed like this, and these people somehow managed to keep themselves alive for 9 days. But by now, their hunger had become so intense that their minds had also stopped working properly, and now death was just a step away from them. They had no other choice. So they decided to eat the dead bodies. First, 4 people went outside the plane and started cutting up the corpses and eating them. Seeing them eat, some other people also changed their minds and went to them to fill their stomachs. But there were 5 people who preferred death to eating another human being. The next day, these people started taking the corpses away to cut them up, so that these 5 people would not be disturbed. Here, a boy named Numa found a suitcase buried in the snow. Upon opening the suitcase, they found a radio inside. After turning on the radio, they realized that there was no signal. For this, these people made an antenna by connecting various things, and on this radio, they heard a news broadcast. It said that the government had launched several rescue operations to find them, and about 66 airplanes had been sent to search for them. But despite all these efforts, when these people could not be found, the government declared them dead. Therefore, the government had now stopped searching for these people. Hearing this news, all the people in the group lost hope. And all their hopes of survival were shattered. Now, of the 5 people who had refused to eat the dead bodies, 4 of them also ate the meat, because they knew that no one would come to help them here. And now they would have to do something themselves to get out of here. Here, 3 people from the group again searched the back of the plane and found the batteries. They decided to bring it along so they could use it to contact the outside world and let them know they were still alive. After that, 3 people set out to find the back of the plane. After walking for several hours, they found some pieces of the plane, which they picked up. They also found the body of the player who had been separated from them during the crash. They buried his body and continued their journey, as they now suspected that the back of the plane was nearby. After hours of climbing, they were all very tired, and the icy winds made it difficult for them to breathe. Night fell quickly, and they decided to spend the night sheltered behind a rock. The next morning when they woke up, they were all covered in snow and their condition was quite bad. The cold was so intense that one of them's eyes were frozen shut, and the other 2 couldn't even stand on their feet. They had absolutely no strength left to move forward. So they sat on the metal shield from the outside of the plane and slid down the mountain. Seeing them empty-handed, sadness spread throughout the group. And that last remaining man also ate human flesh and fell asleep, cursing his fate. Days passed like this, and these people somehow managed to keep themselves alive for 17 days. But the bad thing was that the weather had been very bad for the past 5 days. Everyone was sitting inside the plane to escape the storm when a big storm hit, filling the inside of the plane with snow. Many people inside were buried under the snow. Now, those who remained on top were very frightened by this accident. But then, showing courage, they dug through the snow and pulled out the people buried inside. Everyone came out in time. But one girl was buried very deep in the snow and died of suffocation. These people were very frightened, and they hadn't even fully recovered from this accident when they started hearing strange noises from outside. When they looked outside, they realized that another powerful storm was coming towards them, even stronger than the first one. Another storm hit, and they were all buried in the snow again. This storm was so strong that the entire plane was filled with snow. Some people died on the spot. The people trapped inside now had no way to get out. One of them quickly made a hole in the roof of the plane so that they could get oxygen and avoid suffocating. They were all praying that no more snow would fall on them, otherwise they would all be buried there forever. A few hours later, they composed themselves and gathered a total of 8 dead bodies and placed them in a corner. By now, 18 days had passed since they were trapped there, and they were starving. The only way to survive was to eat the flesh of the dead bodies inside. But doing so was very difficult for all of them, because all these dead bodies belonged to their own people. Seeing all this, the boy named Numa lost control of himself. He got angry and started breaking the plane's window. During this, a piece of glass got stuck in his leg. But even after that, he didn't stop and continued digging through the snow. After 2 days of hard work, they all managed to make a hole towards the top, after which they all came out. They were all so happy to be outside, as if they had been freed from the clutches of death. They celebrated their survival and then started digging the snow to get the plane out. During this, Numa notices that the wound on his leg no longer hurts, because the snow had numbed his wound. However, he doesn't pay much attention to it and continues digging the snow. Now the sun was shining in the sky, so they didn't have much trouble digging through the snow, and within a few hours the plane was free. The sun was quite warm now, so they all started thinking about finding the back part of the plane, but they had no idea how they would face these icy nights. So they decided to wait a little longer because the summer season was approaching, and during that time it would be a little easier to cross this climb. 34 days passed in the blink of an eye, and now the weather had improved a little. Now, those who had gone in search of the plane for the first time were still unwell, and they were in no condition to climb again. A few hours later, they learned that another of their companions had died due to hunger. Seeing this, these people become very disappointed and bury him in the snow. 2 more days passed like this, and on the 36th day, they decided that if they wanted to save their lives, they would have to bring the batteries from the back of the plane and inform the outside world. Otherwise, they would all die one by one. After that, 4 people from the group decided to climb up, and the names of those 4 people were Roberto, Tintin, Numa, Nando. These people wore many layers of clothes to protect themselves from the cold and set off in search of the plane. But even after walking for many hours, they couldn't see the plane anywhere. Then, Numa's condition worsened, and he fainted and fell. Here, the others saw that the infection had spread in his leg wound. So they all decided to take Numa back down. But Numa refused to do so. He decided to go down alone and went ahead of the others. He said, now he had returned to the plane, but his condition was so bad that he fainted as soon as he arrived. A little later, when he regained consciousness, he saw that others were trying to remove the snow from the plane. He also wanted to help them, but due to weakness, he couldn't even move. On the other hand, the 3 companions, after traveling for many hours, reached the place where the back part of the plane was, which had broken off after hitting the cliff. Seeing this, all 3 were very happy and went near the back of the plane. When these 3 started inspecting the plane, they found much more than just batteries, such as lots of clothes, bottles of rum, many packets of cigarettes. These people took the supplies back to their plane where they put the battery in the plane's radio and tried to make contact with the outside world. But unfortunately, the radio was broken, and in this way, their last hope was also dashed. Meanwhile, Noma's health was also deteriorating, and now the infection had spread throughout his body. The food they had found in the plane was also finished, so they all started eating human meat again. Noma stopped eating and drinking so that there would be more food left for the others, because he knew that he would not survive. Now some people from the group went back to the back of the plane again, hoping that they might find something useful. This time luck was on their side, and they found a waterproof cloth, which they joined together to make a sleeping bag. After this, they heard on the radio that after 58 days had passed since the plane crash, the government would launch one last mission to find them. Hearing this news, everyone was revived and got a small ray of hope for survival. Here, some people said that we should stay here and wait for them, while the others said that if we stayed here, no one would be able to see us, so some of us should walk and get help. At night, Noma's condition worsened considerably. He was taking his last breaths. Before dying, he told everyone that when I die, you should all eat me. Saying these words, Noma died. Noma's last words gave everyone courage, and they found a letter from Noma. In that letter, Noma wrote that he was very happy that he died among his friends, because he couldn't have asked for a better death. Now, after reading Noma's letter, a different kind of passion, enthusiasm, filled everyone, and 3 people from the group again set out in search of help. These 3 started their journey with a sleeping bag and plenty of food. This time, these 3 were determined that they would cross these mountains at all costs and reach Chile to call for help for everyone. These 3 continued climbing without stopping, and when night fell, they slept inside the sleeping bag. The next morning, they started their climb again and reached the top of the mountain. But looking at the view from above, their courage seemed to break. There were mountains upon mountains in front of them, and it meant that they still had a very long way to go. The thought crossed their minds that they should all go back, because they didn't have enough food for 3 people to complete this journey. Here, Tintin gave his food to the other 2, and went back so that these 2 could complete this journey easily. Although this journey was quite long and challenging, these 2 did not give up and kept moving forward. And finally, after walking continuously for 10 days, Their hard work paid off. They reached an area where there was much less snow compared to the top. These two also found a river of clean water where they stopped and drank plenty of water. Then something happened that no one had expected. They saw a man on horseback standing on the other side of the river. At first, the two couldn't believe their eyes when they saw the man. They thought they were dreaming. But soon they realized that it wasn't an illusion, but a real person. Their joy knew no bounds upon seeing the man. They shouted loudly, asking the man for help. But the man couldn't understand them because he was quite far away and couldn't hear anything over the noise of the flowing water. So he threw a piece of paper and a pencil across the river so that they could write something down. After that, they washed their hands and faces and packed their belongings. The rescue team quickly arrived at the location and rescued Roberto and Nando, 72 days after the plane crash. All of them were then brought to the city where they reunited with their families, and the entire city welcomed them like heroes. They were then admitted to the hospital. There, they helped each other bathe, and then they were given separate beds. But even that night, they all slept together. Although they were given separate beds, they still slept together that night because they were all deeply traumatized by the accident. At the end of the story, we learned that a total of 45 people were traveling on that plane, of whom only 16 survived. With this, the film based on this true story comes to an end. If you liked the story, please subscribe to our channel and like the video.